Dis mar chuch.
Cofhfuil tú with the goni.
Golly.
But what lat Uta Rocha?
Uta Rocha?
But what lat Uta Rocha?
Answer the question.
That's comedy trio Foyle, Arms and Hog there. Joining me to go through Irish Paper 1 is Muncher Séadhan De Poire with the Dublin Academy of Education. Shane, what is the format of the paper?
So for Irish Paper 1, we start off with the clue statement. So you'll go in, you'll sit down, you'll get your exam handed to you. Nowadays, the writing paper is actually attached to the exam for Irish Paper 1. So you'll get your clue statement and then you'll have your essay at the back of it. But you begin with a clue statement, which will take about 23 minutes in total. Give or take, sometimes 22, sometimes 24, but 23 is a nice average. Once that is finished, you move on to the only written question we have on Irish Paper 1. This causes a lot of confusion, a lot of bother. People around mock time get a little bit stressed and anxious when they don't see any more questions, but it's just a creative writing piece. So we have the option of 5 essays, 2 short stories, a debate or a speech, and you must choose one topic in total. So that is 9 options and you have to choose one.
How long do you have for the written question and how should you approach it?
Okay, so for Irish Paper 1, time is not the enemy. We have, give or take, 1 hour and 50 minutes to write. It should be a minimum of 2 pages, but typically if you're looking for a H1, you're probably going to write about a 4-page answer. So how would I approach it? First of all, I would have a look at all the questions. Students would know at this point what questions they have been preparing for. Typically, in my experience from correcting the Leaving Cert exam, I would see very few students attempt the second section, section B, which is the short story. It would be, very, very unusual to see, more than 1 or 2 of them in your batch of exams you're correcting. The majority of students will attempt the essay, and a couple then will try the debate or the speech at the end. So pick a topic that you have looked at in school, that you have practiced, that you have notes on, that you have information on. And before you go writing your exam, before you go writing your essay, I would take a minute, take a deep breath. This is not like many other subjects when you're against the clock. Far from it here. You've loads of time. Plan what you're, going to write. Have a look at the question, see what suits you, and then put pen to paper and write down what are the topics that suit you, what should you look at, and a little essay plan together. That'll make a huge difference.
Do you have any predictions of topics of essays that are likely to come up?
Yeah, I have a couple that I'd look at, but even before I look at the predictions and stuff, I probably should have mentioned there previously that the way you actually practice, at home and study for the exam is probably even more important than, what even comes up, because a big thing for me is when I'm looking at it for students when they're getting ready for this exam is when you're writing in Irish, the majority of students, and this won't help probably students who are fluent in Irish, they probably don't need my help if they're fluent in Irish already,
yeah.
But students who are not fluent in Irish will think through English and try to write in Irish. And we don't get an awful lot of practice of that. There is no translation question in our exam. So I would tell students to have a practice of that. Like, you know what you want to write in Irish, you have an idea of what it is in English. So make sure you're practicing, having your thoughts down in English on a bit of paper and practice translating them back into Irish, because that's essentially what this is. And the next thing I would say as well is, when you're going to do this, avoid going kind of off topic. If you've learnt a fantastic paragraph, about the life of a young person, but that doesn't appear in the exam, there's no point slotting it into the essay, because if anything is irrelevant, you won't get marks. Like when I look at the marking scheme, it's 100 marks, which is 16.6% of the exam. 80 of the 100 marks go for spelling and grammar.
Okay.
So it's really important that the quality of your Irish is there. Not even the quantity of it, just the quality of it. And that you are writing good, accurate Irish. So make sure your stuff is topical, suited to the question. 15 marks is going for the subject. However, if your subject isn't relevant, it could also impact your Irish grade. I always get a question, can I just write the wrong essay and get 80 out of 100? If you write the wrong essay on purpose, you'll get 0 out of 100. Okay. So that doesn't work. So you have to be on point. You kind of have to be a little bit interesting as well. So yeah, they would be a couple of things I'd be looking at even before I look at the, the predictions. When it comes to predictions, look, the paper's typically set sometime between November and kind of the end of January, typically. No one knows. There's probably a dark room somewhere in Athlone they set the paper. But we're guessing that's, when it's set. Because of that, you're looking at things that are in the news, current affairs around that time. So some of the things that I have looked at with my own class this year have been the Irish language. Obviously, it's in Irish as the subject. The Irish language is going to be important. It does come up a lot, and kneecap have blown up all over social media. So, they've kind of made it trendy and vogue again. So I would definitely have something looked at about the Irish language. We've had our first general election in a long time as well. We've also had an election in America. I would definitely be looking at something to do with politics. The education system is another topic this year. It hasn't appeared in 2 or 3 years. it's all over the news at the moment because we've a whole host of changes coming in the next 2 or 3 years. So they would be 3 topics that I will be having a look at that have been topical this year. And of course there are other ones then you can throw your eye over, like things like the environment or technology kind of are cyclical. They come up, every couple of years. So they would be kind of 3 or 4 titles that I'd be looking at, but there's no guarantee. I always get asked, is there a magic list we can tick off? Like, there is no list. Just current affairs is what you're trying to prepare.
Okay. You say that you're telling me that in order to get a H1, you need to have a bit of flair with your language. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so like I often say to students who are struggling, because look, H1s are absolutely fantastic, but you're targeting then like, 5-10% of the country. So to get your H1, you have to stand out from the crowd. So it's the perfect mixture of having good quality Irish, your seanchuckle, being in your essay, not on a kaintje, nice phrases. Not only that, a small thing that a lot of students would make mistakes on when they struggle with Irish would be their ravuckle, which are your prepositions. I'm probably boring you now with all the grammar talk.
No, this is where the marks are.
Yeah, your air, your de, your do, your le. Like making sure you've got the right preposition with the right verb. That's quite impressive. A lot of students don't understand that because it doesn't really matter as much. I find in English there's a couple of awkward ones. Like I'll use a basic example here. Like when you're listening to music, it's always eicht le kiol. And if you translate that, it's listen with music. It makes no sense. So students sometimes struggle to get the right preposition linked to the right verb. So that would be important as well. Your Tishel Ginneduck, everyone's favourite, the Tishel Ginneduck. So getting your I's and your E's or your shavus in the right place and having good quality examples in the right place for your H1. Yeah. For a H3, because a lot of people will be very happy with a H3 in Irish Paper 1.
Definitely, yeah.
What I would say to them is, focus on the quality and not the quantity. I would say, like typically in an essay, I'd expect to see 6 paragraphs. That's what I would look for, an opening and a closing, and you'd have 4 discussion paragraphs in the middle. I would say to some students, if you're struggling and you find Irish language difficult, if you find it hard to kind of get accurate Irish on a page, reduce that. Cut it back to 5 paragraphs, have an opening and a closing, discuss 3 topics in the middle, and focus on the quality of your language. Simple, short sentences that make sense do far better than long-winded sentences full of errors that I can't really understand. So I always say keep it short and simple.
Talking of paragraphs, another tip you have is don't leave it till the end to read over your essay.
Oh, yeah.
Take it paragraph by paragraph. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so look, with the best will in the world, you tell someone at the very end of your exam, you're tired, maybe emotional, who knows, but you're tired anyway, and I'll say, will you sit there and read over your work for another 10 minutes? I know I'd find it difficult to do that, so I don't know how a 17 or 18-year-old would do it. So I believe that students should read over their work as they do it. We said that they have an hour and 50 minutes. They're not stuck for time. So I would write my paragraph in 10 or 12 minutes. I would then put the pen down and I would actually read over that paragraph before I go on to the next one. Because you're fresh, your mind is working a little bit better. And then at the end of the exam, you only have to motivate yourself to read over the final paragraph of your essay because you've checked the work the whole time as you've been going along. And I think you'll find way more mistakes doing that as opposed to kind of skimming over it at the end. And there's another one I have. It's an unusual one. So I sometimes tell people, if you're reading, right, and you're reading something, your brain will trick you if you're just reading it and you're not reading it out loud. I find anyway with students, if I get them to read something, I could put a mistake in and they won't spot it. And then I ask them to read it out loud and they go, oh, there's a mistake in that. So if you can say it quietly to yourself as you're reading it. Now, I don't need you to have a big loudspeaker in the back of the exam hall shouting it out. But say it quietly to yourself and you might notice an air that should be an on or a let that should be a do, and you might spot the mistakes a little bit quicker. That's what I find works for me and works for my students anyway. Yeah,
because that's the thing with the language is like, well, if you say something kind of out loud or speak it in your head, you're like, oh no, that shouldn't be a B, that should be a H there, and
yeah,
that,
So, exactly, yeah.
Just on the Clúscéiscint, any advice on how to handle that?
Yeah, so what I would say is on the morning of the exam, I see people with their head buried in their notes for 5 different essays. I often wonder, like, how much are they really taking in with 5 essays in their hands and panicking. I would tell students for the Clúscéiscint, half an hour before you go into the exam. The exam should start at 9:30. Sitting outside the exam hall, put in your earphones. Stick on last year's Clúscéiscint. You can get the script on examinations.ie and just listen to it. Don't do any questions, just listen to some Irish. For some students, they may not have done a Clúscéiscint from the time they finish school in mid-May to the time the exams are starting. You're 3 weeks out, you haven't listened to any Irish. So I would stick on a Clúscéiscint. I would listen to it, I would follow the script along and just get yourself warmed up. When you get the paper as well, section A is the easiest section. It's typically 2 kind of short bulletins. What I would tell people is I wouldn't be rushing to translate all the questions in section A because they're typically the easiest ones. So maybe have a look at section B and C because as the tape progresses, you have less and less time between each section to try figure out what you're looking for. I did an experiment with my class in school. We did 2 clues tishkins. I did one where I told them exactly what the questions meant, and one where I didn't help them at all with the questions, and the results were dramatically better for the clues tishkin where they knew what the questions meant. So getting in and writing down what you need to do, is it what aim, what objective, what person, will definitely help them look for the right information.
Really great advice there. Thank you so much. Gurmina Magat, Séadhan De Poire. And Shane has more Irish exam tips on his TikTok page, which you'll find at SDB Gaeilge online. So definitely check that out.
Neil Margaret.
Okay.